Not the last time, the time before, I promised that we would go into joyous effort a little bit, which I'd like to do over the next number of talks anyway. It's such a critical piece of our practice. And in study, you know, it doesn't come, it's one of the 6 far-reaching practices. So in study, we don't really get to it till quite far down the line in terms of looking at developing bodhicitta, and then how we develop bodhicitta, and then the practices to cultivate if we're going to live the bodhisattva way, and then it's way down the line of those practices too. But in fact, it's an essential aspect of practice from the very, very beginning. And I think going into the details about what joyous effort actually entails can help us be deliberate in cultivating because we need it so much. So I want to go back to where I had left off before. My sources here are Shantideva's Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where he describes this in chapter 7, just like continually. And then also Jay Rinpoche has a chapter on each one of these far-reaching attitudes, and then Venerable Chödrön has taught about it a lot and demonstrates it a lot, as far as I can tell. So those are all my sources. But in this very first verse in chapter 7, Shantideva says, you know, what is zeal? You know, once we've established patience, fortitude, then next you have to do cultivate zeal or joyous effort. Why? Because, he says, awakening is established with joyous effort. No joyous effort, no Buddhahood. Kind of basic. And there is no merit without joyous effort. So if we're not doing this with a joyful, effortful mind, with a good intention or good motivation, no merit. Just as there is no movement without wind. So that's what we had talked about before, about joyous effort being the wind that fills the sails of our virtuous activity that then allows us to create the merit, and that we need to be able to develop the mind to do the practices that lead to the house that Jack built. No, that lead to our complete awakening. So what is joyous effort? It is enthusiasm for virtue. What does that mean? It's the mind that wants to practice. It's the mind that delights in all of the aspects of the path. And you know, it's one thing, and we see this, we talk about this a lot, about people who come to the Dharma and they're all excited and they're very enthusiastic about it, and then you get a little bit of learning, or you know, discover that you really have to make some time every day, and then the time every day isn't always so pleasant, and then you start to read things that you can't understand the word that Jeffrey Hopkins just wrote, and you know, our enthusiasm starts to go, and we fizzle out, and sometimes people drift away, and that's that. And how unfortunate that such an opportunity doesn't really have the oomph, you know, doesn't have the juice to keep it going. And so it's this joyous effort that we need to keep that buoyed up and moving along. There's a thing that Pema Chodron said once, I heard her in a teaching that I quote all the time. She says, she was joking, she said, oh, Buddhists are people who feel guilty about not meditating. And that's true. A lot of people, Buddhists are people who feel guilty about not meditating, right? I mean, it's that mind of, oh yeah, I'm a Buddhist, well, I don't practice very much. And so there's no joy in that. And the mind that thinks we should practice, or the mind that thinks, oh, I have to do this, or, you know, that's not a virtuous mind. It's a mind that's grinding through. So we may learn something from that. We may pick up a few, I don't know, memorize a list or two. But we don't, from that kind of mind, we don't have the attitude that will sustain us for the long haul. Venerable Chödrön talks a lot about, with joyous effort, we continue to help others without laziness, resentment, or compassion fatigue. All of which I have experienced in the course of my Dharma life, every one of those. But joyous effort is the antidote to our laziness It's the antidote to our resentment about having to do things, show up, our volunteer work, all that kind of stuff. And it's the antidote to being overwhelmed by the suffering that we may find ourselves in personally, or in the effort that we do to benefit others. The other thing she talks about a lot is that being unable to complete the tasks that we set out to do creates a habit of being unable to finish the tasks that we set out to do for future lives. So, you know, the impact of maybe not finishing this project or not finishing this transcript I was going to do may seem quite small in this life, but without cultivating the joyous effort, the wind that keeps the sail moving, eventually that kind of, if we think of that karma as expanding, that kind of seed that gets planted so we never quite complete the project, well, the project of our awakening isn't going to get completed either. In fact, I could say for myself, that's probably why I'm still sitting here in samsara, in this body, taken through my own karma and afflictions over and over and over and over and over again, because of incomplete projects. The project being what? Enlightenment. I haven't finished it yet. So it's joyous effort that helps us get up in the morning and do our practice. It's joyous effort that helps us take a look at you know, approaching our tasks with enthusiasm. As Venerable Children says, you know, you're never bored when you're a Buddhist, because there's always something in the mind to look at, to work with, to address. But that is the voice of someone who has joyous effort. Otherwise, we look at our minds and we go, you know, we're overwhelmed by our own discouragement. So joyous effort is our antidote. So the texts talk about 3 kinds of joyous effort, and which we'll explore in depth a little bit further on. But there's armor-like joyous effort. It's like putting on the armor of the day, putting on the thing that's going to make it make it joyful all day long. There's the joyous effort of acting constructively or creating virtue. And then there's the joyous effort that works for the benefit of others. So these sound kind of like our Mahayana motivations, doesn't it? And then Shantideva especially describes 3 kinds of obstacles to that. The principal one, of course, is laziness. And there's 3 of those. That's what I mean, the 3 kinds. 3 kinds of laziness. One is the laziness of procrastination and sloth. God, I just can't get out of bed to do this one. The laziness of being busy with our worldly concerns. I have so much to do I can't possibly practice today. And the laziness of discouragement, or just putting ourselves down. And that has several parts too. So we'll discuss these further, but I just wanted to start with Jay Rinpoche, who always is such a great salesman, as Venerable Children says. He talks about how we cultivate this. First, frequently reflect upon the benefits of joyous perseverance and the faults of not doing so. For you will develop joyous perseverance or joyous effort if you habituate yourself to this reflection. So before we even start, we have to convince ourselves that we need a mind that thinks we need joyous effort. We need to be happy about that. And so he lays out some, he quotes a few Mahayana sutras. I won't, it's like a couple of pages of quotes, but basically he's saying that joyous effort clears away all suffering and darkness. That's worth thinking about. Joyous effort is the basis of freedom from miserable realms. One who has joyous effort has no difficulty accomplishing any project. Those who set forth for the Buddha's enlightenment perceive the faults of lethargy and so forth, and then continually persevere with enthusiasm. So the list is long. With joyous effort, you attain the pleasures desired in this life. You are liberated. You reach Buddhahood. One who has joyous effort is not brought down by prosperity. Interesting, huh? Not brought down by prosperity, afflictions, discouragement, or petty attainments. You spend all periods of the day and night fruitfully. Your collection of good qualities does not decline, and your purposes, surpassing the affairs of humankind, flourish like the blue Utpala flower. Now, who wouldn't want to have joyous effort if you think about those verses for just a little while, right? So, just to start, I mean, I think I've shared this before, but one of the most profound, like, personal teachings Venerable Chögyam ever gave me was before a retreat. I asked her for some retreat advice. And, you know, at first she said, I told her what I was going to do. And she said, I said, do you have anything in particular you want me to work on? And she said, no. And then she stopped and she said, enjoy what you're doing. It's the best thought training slogan that I've ever worked with. Maybe because it was personal for me. But it's in terms of thinking of the benefits of joyous effort, just a little practice with enjoy what you're doing starts to cultivate a mind that begins to see that it's a whole lot easier to sustain that level of general interest and happiness than it is to keep digging ourselves out of a hole over and over and over with the antidotes, which we all have done. And will continue to do. But the enjoy what you're doing kind of helps maybe keep us out of the hole a little bit. So we'll talk more about these in the future, but I don't know, for the time being, practice that one.